The wind howled across the open expanse of the northern fjords, carrying the scent of salt and earth. High on the cliffs, where the land met the turbulent sea, stood Ragnar, a seasoned Viking warrior. His piercing blue eyes scanned the horizon, reflecting both the majesty and the danger of the wild world before him. Behind him, the village he called home lay nestled between the jagged cliffs and the dense forest, smoke rising from its hearths. But today, Ragnar was not focused on the quiet of his people. The distant call of a horn echoed across the windswept land, a reminder of the call to adventure he had long resisted. His hand, weathered and scarred from years of battle, rested on the hilt of his axe, the weapon as familiar to him as the breath in his chest. Ragnar had lived his life for the gods, the sea, and the thrill of battle, but now something stirred within him, an unknown force, an unspoken calling to seek something more. "It's time," Ragnar muttered to himself, his voice low and heavy with thought. Time for a new journey, a new saga. As the wind swept across the cliffs, Ragnar turned toward his village, knowing that the path he would choose now would change everything. The storm, which had been brewing since dawn, finally unleashed its fury upon the village. Ragnar stood at the edge of the settlement, his figure stark against the chaos. The wind howled, throwing rain in every direction, but the villagers continued their work, carrying wood to the longhouses, securing their boats along the shore. Ragnar watched them for a moment, then turned his back on the village, his mind still set on the path he would take. A deep part of him felt the weight of responsibility. As the chieftain of this village, it was his duty to protect these people, but he could no longer ignore the call to venture out into the unknown. The horn sounded again, this time from the direction of the forest. "It's time," Ragnar muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He glanced back toward the village, a moment of hesitation passing over him. "They can carry on without me for now," he said, his voice filled with certainty. With one last look he set off toward the forest, the storm pushing him forward. Ragnar's boots splashed in the mud as he made his way toward the forest, the wind pushing against him with relentless force. The trees ahead were dark and dense, their tops swaying in the gusts of wind, but the path was clear. As he walked, Ragnar couldn't help but think about the journey that lay ahead. He had heard the legends of the great halls of the gods, the places where warrior souls were said to rest, but he had never believed in them until now. His mind wandered back to the horn he had heard earlier, the sound that had set his feet in motion. The horn belonged to a fellow Viking, someone he trusted. Ragnar quickened his pace, his axe at the ready, the weight of his decision settling heavily on him. There was no turning back now. Whatever was out there, whatever secrets the forest held, he would face it head on. "No more hesitation," Ragnar muttered. "No more waiting." The deeper Ragnar ventured into the forest, the more oppressive the silence became. The storm raged behind him, but here, in the heart of the woods, there was only stillness. The trees loomed overhead, their branches intertwined, casting the forest floor in shadow. It felt like a place forgotten by time. Ragnar's instincts told him that something ancient lay in this forest. As he passed a particularly large oak tree, its gnarled roots twisting into the earth, a strange feeling washed over him. He stopped, looking around cautiously. The air was still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, a shape moved in the shadows, darting just out of view. Ragnar's hand tightened around his axe, his senses on high alert. "Who is there?" he called, his voice carrying through the silence. But the figure did not respond. Instead, the only sound that followed was the faint whisper of the wind. Ragnar's heart raced as the figure stepped out from the shadows. It was a man, tall and lean, with dark eyes that gleamed in the dim light. His face was weathered, and his cloak was tattered, a sign of someone who had seen many battles. But it was the sword at his side, an ornate blade with strange markings, that caught Ragnar's attention. "I've been waiting for you," the stranger said, his voice low and measured. Ragnar's grip tightened on his axe. "Who are you?" he demanded. The stranger smiled slightly. "Someone who shares your journey," he replied. "You seek answers just as I do. I've come to guide you if you're willing to listen." Ragnar studied him carefully. He had heard rumors of mysterious figures in the forest, ones who knew the ancient ways of the gods. But Ragnar was not one to trust easily. "Guide me where?" Ragnar asked, his voice suspicious. The stranger's eyes gleamed brighter. "To the halls of the gods." Ragnar stood still, his eyes narrowing as the mysterious stranger made his offer. The wind had begun to pick up again, and the distant sound of the storm echoed in the trees. "You seek answers just as I do," the stranger said again, his voice thick with both certainty and secrecy. Ragnar studied him for a long moment, weighing the stranger's words. Trust did not come easily to a warrior like him, and yet something about this man, his presence, his aura, compelled Ragnar to listen. The stranger's gaze didn't falter, the intensity of his dark eyes locked onto Ragnar's. "The gods have chosen you," the stranger continued. "Your path is already written, you only need to walk it." Ragnar's heart pounded in his chest. "And if I refuse?" he asked, his tone low and filled with challenge. The stranger smiled, though it wasn't a comforting smile. "Then you will never know the truth behind your destiny." Ragnar took a step forward, his gaze still hard. "Show me," he said. "Lead the way." The stranger led Ragnar deeper into the forest, their steps falling silent on the wet earth. The further they walked, the darker the woods became. The storm seemed to be growing louder in the distance, but here in the heart of the forest, there was no sound save for the whispering of the wind through the trees. It was as if the world had quieted for them. Ragnar's mind raced. His instincts told him this man was dangerous, yet there was a pull he couldn't deny. The stranger glanced back at him, sensing his unease. "You are not the first to seek the halls of the gods," the stranger said cryptically, his voice low, barely audible over the rustling of the leaves. "There have been others, warriors, kings, fools. They all sought the same thing. Some found it, some did not." Ragnar's brow furrowed. "What is it you want then?" he asked, his tone sharp. The stranger's smile was cold. "I seek the truth, just as you do, but you must first prove you are worthy." Ragnar and the stranger finally reached a clearing, the trees parting to reveal an ancient stone circle in the center. The stones were massive, covered in moss and vines, and etched with symbols Ragnar didn't recognize. It was a place of power, a place where the very air felt charged with ancient energy. The stranger stepped forward, his hands raised as though in reverence. "This is the gateway," he said, his voice filled with awe. Ragnar looked around, sensing the power that radiated from the stones. The wind seemed to die down, and the world fell silent. "The gods wait here," the stranger continued, "but they will not reveal themselves to just anyone. You must prove your worth." Ragnar's grip on his axe tightened as he took a step closer to the stones. "How?" he asked, his voice low. The stranger's smile faded, and he turned to face Ragnar. "The gods will test you, warrior. Only those who can withstand the trials will be granted the knowledge they seek." The stranger stepped aside, gesturing for Ragnar to enter the stone circle. "This is where your journey truly begins," the stranger said, his voice now soft, almost reverent. Ragnar hesitated for a moment, his mind racing with questions. What trials awaited him here? Would he survive whatever tests the gods had in store? With a final resolute glance at the stranger, Ragnar stepped into the circle. The moment his feet touched the ground within the stones, the air around him grew heavy, and a low rumble filled the air, like the earth itself was awakening. The stranger's voice echoed in Ragnar's mind. "The gods will speak through the trials. You must face your greatest fears, your deepest doubts. Only by overcoming them will you gain the strength to claim your destiny." Ragnar's heart raced, his grip on his axe tightening. He was no longer just a warrior, he was a man on the edge of something far greater. And now, the trials had begun. Ragnar stood at the heart of the stone circle, the wind now calm, and the world around him shrouded in eerie silence. The air felt thick with magic, and the ancient stones seemed to pulse with a power beyond comprehension. He gripped his axe tightly, ready for whatever trial the gods would impose. A deep, rumbling voice echoed from the stones, vibrating through his chest. "Warrior of the North, you stand before us, but you are not yet worthy." The voice was a low growl, reverberating through the very earth. Ragnar's grip on his axe tightened, but his stance remained firm. "What must I do?" he demanded, his voice filled with determination. A faint laugh echoed in the wind, followed by another rumble. "Prove yourself, warrior. Your greatest challenge lies within." Before Ragnar could react, the ground beneath him split open, revealing a vast chasm. The stones shimmered, and the voice continued. "Face what lies within the darkness. Only then will you have the power to claim your destiny." Ragnar steeled himself and stepped forward, prepared to face whatever the gods had in store. Ragnar's heart pounded as he stepped toward the edge of the chasm, the darkness below calling to him. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and the distant rumble of thunder echoed from far away. The gods were watching, and their judgment was swift. As he peered into the blackness, a shadow moved within it, something enormous, something ancient. A low growl rose from the depths of the chasm, sending a chill through Ragnar's spine. He knew what was coming. From the dark abyss, a monstrous creature with eyes that glowed like embers rose up, its massive form silhouetted against the faint light of the stone circle. The creature roared, its breath hot and foul, and it lunged toward Ragnar with terrifying speed. "So, it's you who tests me," Ragnar said, his voice low but steady. With a battle cry he charged forward, his axe raised high, ready to face whatever challenge lay before him. The beast's claws slashed through the air, and Ragnar met it head-on, the battle for his fate now unfolding. The battle between Ragnar and the beast was fierce, the ground shaking with every strike. Ragnar dodged and weaved, his movements swift despite the size of the creature. His axe cleaved through the air, meeting the beast's thick, scaly hide, but it barely seemed to faze it. The creature growled and swung its massive claws, narrowly missing Ragnar as he ducked beneath the blow. With a roar, Ragnar countered, striking again with all his strength. The creature hissed in pain, but its eyes burned with rage. It lunged again, this time catching Ragnar's side with a glancing blow that sent him sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through his body, but Ragnar refused to give up. He pushed himself up, his gaze locked on the beast. "You will not defeat me," Ragnar said, his voice a low growl. With renewed resolve, he charged once more, determined to end the fight. The gods were watching, and he would not fail them. The battle seemed to stretch on forever, the storm raging in the distance. Ragnar's muscles burned with exhaustion, but the beast before him was relentless. He had been tested before, but never like this. With each swing of his axe he felt the weight of his ancestors behind him, their spirits urging him to continue. The creature roared, its massive form towering over him, but Ragnar did not flinch. He leaped to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's claws, and with a mighty cry he swung his axe one final time. This time, his blow found its mark. The axe sliced through the creature's throat, and it let out a final deafening roar before collapsing to the ground, lifeless. Ragnar stood over the fallen beast, his chest heaving with exhaustion and triumph. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. But as the beast's body crumbled, the ground beneath Ragnar's feet began to shake once more, signaling the next trial was about to begin. He had passed this test, but the gods were not done with him yet. The earth shook violently, and the sky above cracked open with a deafening roar. The stone circle trembled, and Ragnar's heart raced as he stepped back. From the very ground beneath him, massive stone figures began to rise, each one taller than a man and covered in ancient runes. The air crackled with energy, and Ragnar knew that this final trial would be his greatest yet. The figures, each bearing weapons, moved slowly, purposefully, as if they were being summoned by an ancient force. Ragnar's hands tightened around his axe, his body aching from the previous battle, but he stood tall, ready to face whatever came next. One of the stone figures turned to face him, its eyes glowing with a pale, eerie light. The voice of the gods rumbled in Ragnar's ears. "To claim your destiny, you must defeat what has risen from the earth. Only then will the power of the gods be yours. Ragnar nodded, his gaze never leaving the stone figure. Then I will fight, he said, his voice steady, knowing that the battle would determine the future of his people, his legacy. The stone figures moved toward Ragnar with terrifying precision, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground beneath him. Their eyes glowed, cold and unyielding, and their massive weapons gleamed in the dim light. Ragnar's breath came in ragged gasps, his muscles aching from the previous trials, but his resolve had never been stronger. With a battle cry, he charged forward, his axe raised high. The first stone figure swung its massive sword, its blade crashing toward Ragnar. With a swift move, Ragnar ducked, narrowly avoiding the blow, and with a forceful strike, his axe met the stone creature's side. The impact sent a shockwave through his body, but the stone figure barely reacted. Ragnar cursed under his breath, realizing that the creatures before him were unlike anything he had ever faced. They were not alive in the traditional sense, yet their power was undeniable. He would need more than brute strength to defeat them. "Come at me!" Ragnar shouted, his eyes locked on the approaching figures. "I am ready!" Ragnar's heart raced as he continued to evade the stone figures' attacks, his body pushed to the limit. Sweat mixed with the dirt and blood on his skin, but he remained focused. He had faced countless battles, but this was different. Each swing of his axe felt like it was cutting through stone itself. He needed to find a weakness. As he dodged another strike, his eyes caught the faintest glimmer of light from within the stone's chest, an exposed rune glowing brighter than the others. Ragnar lunged, aiming for the rune, but just before he could strike, one of the stone figures swept its weapon across, knocking him off balance. He stumbled back, but the moment of hesitation was enough for the creature to gain ground. With a roar, Ragnar pushed himself to his feet and charged again, his mind racing. "One hit," he muttered to himself, his focus narrowing on the glowing rune. Just one hit. With a fierce battle cry, Ragnar lunged forward once again, this time targeting the glowing rune on the stone figure's chest. His axe connected with a thunderous crash, and a shockwave rippled through the clearing. The stone figure let out a deep, resonating growl as cracks formed along its body. Ragnar, bloodied and bruised, stepped back, watching with wide eyes as the creature staggered. The rune on its chest flickered and dimmed, the power behind the creature's movements faltering. Ragnar's breath was heavy, but he knew this was his chance. The other stone figures hesitated for a brief moment, sensing their comrade's weakness. Ragnar didn't hesitate. With a series of swift strikes, he drove his axe deep into the creature's chest, and with one final blow, the figure crumbled into a pile of stone, its power dissipating into the air. The rumble of the earth slowly faded, but Ragnar could feel that this victory was just the beginning. The last of the stone figures hesitated, its eyes glowing with fury and confusion. Ragnar stood, breathing heavily, his axe raised once more. The silence between them felt like an eternity, but Ragnar could feel the shift in the air. The gods were watching. The remaining figure lunged forward, its weapon raised high, but Ragnar was ready. He sidestepped the attack, and with a swift motion, drove his axe into the creature's back, striking the same glowing rune he had seen earlier. The creature staggered, then crumbled into dust, leaving behind nothing but the lingering echo of its fall. Ragnar stood over the remains, his body sore and aching, but his spirit unbroken. The storm had passed, and the forest was still once again. A new silence took hold, one of victory. But Ragnar knew that the true test was yet to come. The gods had not revealed their hand completely. He turned toward the center of the stone circle, awaiting the next challenge, knowing that he had proven himself worthy to face it. As Ragnar stood in the heart of the stone circle, the ground beneath him began to rumble once more. This time, it was not a creature that rose from the earth, but something far older. The stones that surrounded the circle glowed brighter, their runes illuminating the clearing with a faint ethereal light. From within the earth, a figure began to emerge, a tall, imposing figure with a crown of runes and eyes that burned with the wisdom of ages. Ragnar's breath caught in his throat as the figure approached, its presence radiating power. "You have proven your strength, warrior," the figure spoke, its voice like thunder in the clearing. "But power alone is not enough." Ragnar stood tall, meeting the figure's gaze with defiance. "What is it you seek then?" he asked. The figure smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Wisdom, courage, the heart of a true warrior. These are the tests that await you now." With those words, the figure raised its hand, and the stones of the circle hummed with power. Ragnar's journey was far from over. The god's figure towered over Ragnar, its ancient power radiating from every pore. As the ethereal glow from the runes intensified, Ragnar felt his body tense, his heart racing with both anticipation and fear. The god's voice echoed once more, filling the space with a deep, resonant tone. "Warrior of the North, you have proven your strength and resilience. But strength alone does not shape the destiny of a leader. You must learn the true nature of power, wisdom, compassion, and the ability to lead your people through darkness." Ragnar stood tall, his gaze unwavering. But a flicker of doubt passed over him. The journey he had embarked upon had pushed him beyond his limits, but now it seemed that the gods demanded more. "What must I do?" Ragnar asked, his voice filled with a mixture of determination and trepidation. The god smiled, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "The trials are not over, Ragnar. You must face your greatest fears, those that lie deep within your heart. Only then will you be ready." As the god's words lingered in the air, the ground beneath Ragnar shifted. The stone circle seemed to pulse with energy, and the world around him seemed to blur. The air thickened, and suddenly, Ragnar was no longer standing in the forest. The ancient stones had disappeared, and he found himself in a vast empty plain, the sky above dark and foreboding. A single figure appeared on the horizon, his younger brother, Jorund. Ragnar's heart skipped a beat. Jorund had died many years ago in battle, his body never recovered, but here he stood, alive and well, walking toward Ragnar. "Jorund?" Ragnar whispered, his voice shaky. Jorund smiled, but there was something in his eyes that Ragnar couldn't place. "I have come to show you what you fear most, Ragnar," Jorund said, his voice soft but filled with an unsettling calm. "Face it, and you will understand your true power." Ragnar's mind raced, his chest tightening as memories of Jorund's death flooded back. Was this a trial, or a cruel trick of the gods? Ragnar took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. His brother's appearance, so vivid and lifelike, was both a blessing and a curse. He could feel his emotions swirling, joy, sorrow, and a deep sense of loss. "Jorund, how?" Ragnar choked out, his voice breaking. The image of his brother reached out to him, his smile bittersweet. "The gods have created this trial to show you what you truly fear," Jorund said. "Not your enemies, not the battles, but the pain of loss and the burden of leadership." Ragnar's chest tightened as memories of their past flashed through his mind. Long nights by the fire, the sound of Jorund's laughter, their shared victories, and the heart-wrenching day when he had lost him. The god's voice boomed in Ragnar's mind. "To lead your people, you must accept your grief, your past, and your fears. Only then can you move forward." Ragnar's legs trembled, but his grip on his axe tightened. "I cannot let you go again," Ragnar said, his voice firm, though it wavered with emotion. "But I must." Jorund stepped forward, his expression soft but resolute. "You have carried the weight of this grief for too long, Ragnar. You must let go." Ragnar's heart clenched as he looked at his brother, the figure of the past that he had never fully accepted losing. The wind howled around them, but there was a sense of stillness, as though the world was holding its breath. The god's voice echoed in Ragnar's mind once more. "To lead, you must accept loss. You must face your fears and move forward, for the future lies ahead, not behind." Ragnar's breath caught in his throat, as he realized the truth in the god's words. His brother's death had shaped him, but it did not define him. "I will not be bound by the past," Ragnar said, his voice steady and full of resolve. With a final look at Jorund, he turned away. The figure of his brother began to fade, his form dissolving into the wind. "Thank you," Ragnar whispered, his heart heavy but at peace. The trial was over, and Ragnar knew that he was ready for the next step. Ragnar opened his eyes, and the world around him shifted once more. The stone circle reappeared, the ancient runes glowing brightly as the god's form materialized once again before him. The storm had cleared, and the air was still, heavy with the power of the trial. The god's voice resonated in Ragnar's chest. "You have passed the test, Ragnar. You have faced your deepest fears and conquered them. You are now ready to lead, not through strength alone, but through wisdom and compassion." Ragnar stood tall, his body weary, but his spirit stronger than ever. "I will lead my people," Ragnar declared, his voice filled with certainty. "I will honor my brother's memory, but I will not be bound by it. I will walk the path before me, for the future of the North." The god nodded, its eyes glowing with approval. "Then go forth, Ragnar, for your destiny awaits." With those final words, the god faded, leaving Ragnar standing alone in the stone circle. His journey had only just begun. The runes dimmed, and the clearing fell silent. Ragnar stood tall in the center of the circle, his body aching, his spirit awakened. The forest around him shimmered, fading between reality and something far more ancient. A voice echoed again, not from the god, but from within him. "Return now, child of the North. Your people await, and with you, their fate." Ragnar turned slowly, the trials behind him, the future before him. The path home was no longer shrouded in doubt, it was lit with purpose. As he stepped beyond the stones, the forest seemed to part, revealing the way back. Yet, with each step, a new awareness settled in his bones. He was no longer the man who had stood at the cliff's edge days ago. He was more, tempered by loss, tested by gods, and chosen to lead. Behind him, the stones whispered into the wind, their light fading as if bidding farewell. The village appeared through the thinning mist, its familiar sounds and sights a sharp contrast to the divine trials Ragnar had endured. Smoke curled from chimneys, and the scent of pine and ash filled the air. Yet as he approached, the villagers paused, eyes wide with wonder and awe. He was bloodied, weathered and worn, but his presence was different. Elders stepped forward, their eyes filled with questions, children clung to their mothers, and warriors lowered their weapons in respect. Ragnar met their gaze. "I have returned," he said. "Not as the man I was, but as the leader I was meant to be." Whispers moved through the crowd like wind through grass, some in awe, others in fear. But as the village seer stepped forward, tears in her eyes, she whispered, "He carries the breath of the gods." A hush fell. Ragnar had not only survived the trials, he had brought their fire home. Not all welcomed his return. That night, as fires crackled and the villagers celebrated his homecoming, a whisper of unrest grew. Some feared the change in him, others questioned his path. "What did you bring back with you?" one warrior asked, eyes narrowed. Ragnar stood before them, calm and composed. "I brought back the truth," he replied. "The gods do not want blind swords, they want hearts that burn with wisdom." The room grew quiet, but one man, Eric, stepped forward, strong, defiant. "We need strength, Ragnar, not riddles. Can you still lead us?" Ragnar met his gaze, the silence heavier than iron. "Then test me," he said, drawing his axe. Eric hesitated, but saw in Ragnar not a threat but something greater. He lowered his blade. "You are not the man who left," Eric said. "No," Ragnar replied. "I am the one who must lead." The reckoning had passed, not with blood, but with understanding. Days passed and a new council was called. The elders gathered in the temple hall, their furs heavy, their eyes watching Ragnar with careful consideration. "What will you lead us to?" one elder asked. Ragnar looked around the circle, his voice steady. "To a future where strength is not measured only in blood but in courage to change. The gods have shown me a path, one of unity, not conquest." Murmurs rose. Some nodded, others frowned. But the seer stepped forward, her voice clear. The runes speak his truth. He is chosen. The elders fell silent. Ragnar continued, I do not ask for your obedience, I ask for your faith. And slowly, the heads began to bow, not from submission, but from hope. As the first rays of morning broke over the cliffs, Ragnar stood once again where it had all begun, at the edge of the fjord. The sea was calm, the sky washed in hues of orange and gold. Behind him the village stirred, alive with purpose. He closed his eyes, letting the wind wash over him, the scent of the ocean now familiar, no longer a summons, but a memory. The trials had ended, but his true journey had just begun. He would lead, not only as a warrior, but as a voice for those who could not speak, as a light for those lost in shadow. Jorund, he whispered, I will carry us forward. And as the wind shifted, he could have sworn he heard his brother's laughter, carried across the waves. Ragnar turned to the rising sun, his steps sure and steady. A new saga had begun. The peace was not to last. Weeks after Ragnar's return, a messenger came running through the village gates, breathless and pale. He's returned, the boy gasped. The man from the forest, the one with the sword of runes. Ragnar's blood ran cold. He stepped into the center of the village, eyes scanning the crowd. Where? He asked. At the edge of the sacred grove, the boy whispered. Ragnar did not hesitate. Axe in hand, he made his way toward the grove. The forest had not forgotten him, and neither had the stranger. As Ragnar entered the grove, there he stood, the same lean figure, cloaked in mystery, his sword gleaming under the twilight sky. You have grown, the stranger said. But so has the darkness. The trials were but the beginning, Ragnar. The real enemy stirs beyond the mountains. Ragnar's jaw clenched. Then speak clearly. The stranger nodded. A forgotten god walks again, and only one who has passed the circle may face him. That night, Ragnar sat with the elders around the fire, the stranger's warning burning in his mind. There is an old fire beneath the mountain, the seer spoke. It was sealed long ago, but if it stirs again, the north will fall. Ragnar looked into the flames, seeing the shape of a serpent coiling within the wood smoke. The stranger sat nearby, silent but watchful. What is this god? Ragnar asked. Not a god, the seer corrected. A devourer. An ancient force banished by the Allfather himself. Ragnar stood, the weight of prophecy heavy upon his shoulders. Then I will go, he declared. To the mountain. I will find this flame and end it before it burns the world. The stranger raised a brow. You will need more than your axe. Ragnar nodded. Then teach me. The fire blazed higher, casting long shadows as the village prepared for a storm far greater than any before. Before he could leave, Ragnar sought out the sacred well, the mirror of truth guarded by the old mystics. There he would take the oath of the Nine, a rite forgotten by most but remembered in times of grave peril. As he knelt, the mystics chanted, and visions filled his mind. Of war, of sacrifice, of a burning world. Swear it now, one whispered, or turn away forever. Ragnar took the oath, his voice calm but strong. By the 9 realms, by my ancestors, by the gods, and by my blood. I vow to protect this land, even should it cost me everything. The water shimmered, then stilled. A new mark burned upon Ragnar's forearm, glowing with ancient script. He had been accepted. The gods would watch. As dawn broke, Ragnar stood at the village gate. Warriors gathered, offering oaths of loyalty. Yet Ragnar had made his choice. This journey he must walk alone. His daughter, Freydis, stepped forward, her face strong, though tears welled in her eyes. You go to battle a shadow, she said. Then I will carry the light, Ragnar replied, pulling her close. Lead them well if I do not return. The village watched in silence as Ragnar mounted the hill beyond the forest. One by one, the villagers raised their fists in silent salute. The horizon ahead was veiled in mist, the mountains beyond it cloaked in storm. Ragnar never looked back. His footsteps would echo in their hearts long after the winds erased them from the earth. The journey was long. Snow turned to ash as Ragnar neared the foot of the mountain. Strange whispers carried on the wind, and the air tasted of metal and fire. Finally, he stood before the ancient gate carved into the rock, a massive doorway lined with symbols long erased from memory. As he stepped forward, the earth trembled. The gate creaked open, spilling out a warmth that did not comfort. Inside, the path descended into a heart of fire. From the depths came a sound, not a roar, not a voice, but something older, something hungry. Ragnar gripped his axe, stepping into the red-lit cavern. "I do not fear you," he said into the darkness. "I have faced gods. I have faced myself." And the flame answered with silence, followed by the sound of something vast stirring beneath the earth.